So there we go, a bunch of good memories. The drop-in bus. I want a goat on this frame. This frame is the one that I broke my femur on. Ooh, let me go get the beanie.
What? Oh.
So I got this new slope bike the other day, and I mean, it's very, very sick looking slope bike. And it got me thinking about all the slope bikes I've had over the years from Trek. And they're all sitting on the wall right here. All the ones that have significance, the ones that I associate with nostalgia, I have sentimental value attached to. I can't get rid of them. They all just sit right there. And they're like little pieces of art that remind me of some good times on them. Some bad times on them. And I figured it would be kind of cool to do a video just talking about all these frames. I've dug up a bunch of old footage that I have from riding all these things. So I figured it's pretty wintry outside. Let's do a video talking about all these things. We should start at the beginning. 2004 right here. This hunk of metal. It was like the prototypiest of prototypes. And it was my first year on Trek, 2004. I was coming from riding Ellsworth bikes. They actually had a really good short travel bike that I was using for slopestyle contests, the Ellsworth Joker. And when I switched to Trek, they didn't have a slope bike. And so I was kind of like, well, what am I going to ride for contests? And they're like, we're Trek. We'll make you whatever you want. So at the time, they were prototyping a new bike called the Session 77. It was a 7-inch travel free ride bike, single crown, pretty much just made for chucking. And so they used that platform as the basis to design their first stab at a slopestyle frame. So what they did is they took that Session 77 frame, and they just kind of cut the tubes up. They made the down tube, the top tube shorter, and kind of just put together something that would be a starting point. It was super heavy, but it got the job done. And I got this frame in August of 2004. It was right after Crankworx Whistler Slopestyle that year. And I was 18, so that was my first summer out of high school. And instead of going to college, my college was the drop-in bus. I went from Whistler, BC, my parents in our van and my brother, we all drove down to the outskirts of Vancouver. What was it? Chilliwack. That's where the Pink Bike headquarters was, and that's where the drop-in Season 3 bus was taking off for its 2-month road trip. My first times riding it was on that show, riding with guys like Dylan Tremblay, Tyler Super T. Klassen, Steve Romanuk. Mostly my memories are just traveling around BC, way north BC. We made it all the way up to Prince Rupert and just finding fun trails, trying to do tricks on trails on this thing, finding dirt jumps, training through rhythm sections with all those guys. And what really, you look back now, and this frame, which was like a total experiment to give this young kid a slopestyle bike, it was the start of the Ticket S. And it just progressed from there. So the very next year, 2005, and this year I rode this bike a ton. It was my first year having a segment in New World Disorder, which was a full-on dream come true for me because those are the videos that I grew up on. I think my first year being in the video was NWD 6. I took this thing all over the place, to Europe for contests, a ton of shooting at home in Aptos for New World Disorder, Whistler, a big year at Crankworx on this frame. I remember they had a hand plant stump in the middle of the course. And so 2005, I was 19. It was like a big learning year for me. Like I learned the majority of my tricks that year and did tons of contests. I won a goat on this frame. Let's move on from the goat. Let's move on to 06 because this is probably, out of all these frames here, there's 11 of them that I kept up on the wall. This one means the most to me. 06 was like a breakout year for me in terms of competitions, but also my favorite film segment I think I've ever had. NWD 7, New World Disorder 7. I had the opener, and I used this frame a ton in it. Actually, going back one step, I actually shot a bunch for NWD7 on this frame as well. So my NWD7 segment, which was 2006, I did on both of these frames, but this frame, I really love this one, partially because of the finish. It's insane. It's like a mirror finish. It's polished. All the traveling I did on this thing, took it to Turkey, backflipped off this ancient cave that we put a lip on. This is my favorite one of the whole lot. So let's move on to the next one. 2007 right here, gray finish. You see the tube change a little bit here in 07. 05 and 06 had the same tubes. 07 was just like its own prototype. It wasn't stolen from any other existing frame. This was the year that we did Seasons, the collective film Seasons. So I got a lot of footage on this bike riding in Whistler on A-line, like tail up in some jumps on A-line. Then we built a special jump. And yeah, one of my favorite tricks ever, the backflip Superman, I learned on that bike. Oh yeah, I flipped this old canyon gap that I kept returning to in New World Disorder segments. I flipped it on that frame. I shot a lot in cam loops. We built like side-by-side tabletops. I wanted to do like transfers. I had seen in snowboard contests a similar feature. And so those are some of the memories I have on that bike.
Was there a lot of companies making, kind of slopestyle specific bikes at this point?
That's a really good point. So if you take it back to 04 with that first frame, there was like no such thing as a slopestyle bike. People were just riding like slalom race bikes for these dirt jump and slopestyle competitions. And then at this point, Trek was the only company that was really making like a designated slopestyle bike, albeit just a prototype that they were just giving to their sponsored competition riders. And then Specialized came out with the Peace Slope. I'm not sure which year they came out with that, but that was like the first time where a company was like, oh, the slopestyle thing is real deal. We should make a bike for it, not just for our riders, but sell it. And so there's all the pressure on Trek to do the same thing. Not that slopestyle bikes is a big category that's going to sell a ton of bikes, but I know a lot of people were like, when is Trek going to put that thing out? This bike was getting on a lot of podiums. I was starting to win some contests on these things, and Brandon was starting to win some contests on these things. And there was kids who wanted to do that with their riding, and just modding down a trail bike just didn't really work. It's harder to spin, harder to flip, harder to whip, harder to bar spin. And so we're getting closer now along this little lineage here, this chronology. We're getting closer to the point where they actually did eventually make it a production bike, but it had some evolution to go before it was ready and kind of like worthy of being a production bike. We were still, tweaking things from year to year on these ones. And this 08 version right here, this white one, is, you can see, like just like a cleaner version of the bikes that came before. Another instance of Trek using the Remedy tube set as the foundation for the slope frame. And this was the first year where we started getting some really creative paint schemes. So like those robot looking graphics, kind of pixelated looking graphics. And at this point in time, we weren't asking for custom frame paint or graphics or anything like that, which made it really exciting to open up a box. You have no idea what your slope frame is going to look like for the year. So I would open up the box and see this really cool blue and white color scheme and just be so amped to put it together. And it matched nicely with the Fox suspension I was running at the time. One of the most significant memories I have on this frame is this river gap in New World Disorder. Big Red Ted built this crazy gap over a river in Squamish, and we cruised out there. Axel set up another killer cable cam. My goal was I wanted to tail whip across it, so we got the Superman Sea Crab, and then eventually just bucked up and decided to tail whip across it. One of the things I enjoyed most about riding these bikes is taking them out to terrain that they don't really belong in, So a lot of time in Utah on this white and blue 2008 frame right here, tail whipping off of drops, trying to hit these difficult hips, and a lot of time in the woods riding trails. They're kind of like a trail bike that's just a little bit more nimbly-bimbly and maneuverable. So I would take this thing out to places like Black Rock here in Oregon with one of my idols forever, Kurt Voorhees. So I was able to do some fun film trips with him for New World Disorder 9. And when I look at this frame, I think about, yeah, some of the results I had, which were cool, but I also think about those times for those film trips in the desert, in the woods, just pushing myself to do these tricks. And the cinematography of the time, you look at the footage now and you're like, oh, that's probably a drone. Oh, that's probably like a GoPro on your head. No, like some of the footage from these years, it's a 16 millimeter camera mounted to a helmet for the POV. It's a cable cam spanning from one side to the other across a valley to get these hovering wide angle shots that you would typically see being shot with a drone now. So the stuff that the Freeride crew and the Ant Hill Collective crew, guys like Alex Fosvet were doing back then to get those pieces of footage that I'm going to put in this video, you're used to seeing footage like that if you watch videos these days, but what they had to do to be able to get that footage back then was incredible. So let's move it right along. Let's go to 2009. I did so much on this bike and I almost lost it. I almost had a missing link in the chain here because this bike, after riding it for over a year, it didn't show up to my destination when I was flying home from Whitestyle in Austria. Where's my bike? You fill out the little paperwork, lost item. I won't bore you with the details, but I didn't get that bike back for a whole year. And I was so glad when I did. And this thing made it all over the place. I was in Baja, Mexico, camping out, digging jumps in the desert there. Highland Mountain Bike Park, that place ended up being one of those spots that I would always return to year after year to film stuff for my New World Disorder segments. I ended up working on a trick, probably the hardest trick that I had ever done at that point in time, the front flip Superman, and I landed that for the first time on this bike at Highland Mountain Bike Park. And follow me, we shot that night segment at Windell. So this is the bike that I jumped onto a trampoline and tail-upped off with. And if it were to have gone missing forever, I would have felt like this collection was not complete. So I'm really happy to have this one back. And I'm going to look at the timeline and think that if there's anything else I forgot to say about that one. All right, what frame are we at now? Oh boy. Okay. This one, I got some stories for you on this one. Remember at the beginning of the video I said I've had a lot of good times on these bikes and some not so good times. I'll tell you about some good times on this one, and then I'll tell you about some not so good times. This bike, it was my 2010 bike, this black and yellow bike. Let's talk about how the paint scheme came to be. The graphics department at Trek, along with the painter, they were like, you know what? We've got this thing going now called C3 Project. You can see that logo appear on this frame for the first time there on the seat tube. And Brandon and I were at Trek headquarters sitting around a table, and they're like, you know what? We want to give you guys some really cool graphics on your frames this year. We want to have animal theme. So let us know what animals you want to have incorporated into this, and then we'll do it up with whatever colors you like. So Brandon, he picked a cat, so he had some really cool like calico cat looking stuff. And I really just thought zebra stripes looked cool. And I was looking at like Chris Cole skateboards and stuff like that. He always had those real bright colors, a lot of leopard zebra print. I was like, black and yellow would look so killer. And I was also thinking about, like way back in the day, I told you one of my idols has always been Kurt Voorhees. Way back in the day, Kurt was running a black and yellow Intense, and he had the old Fox James Stewart, like black and yellow zebra print jersey. It was the coolest stuff ever. So I showed that to Trek, the Chris Cole stuff, the James Stewart, Kurt Voorhees stuff, and I was like, let's do black and yellow with zebra. And there we go. The first year of the C3 project is up and running. First year that the FMB World Tour exists. So I'm going for points. I'm just thinking, all right, FMB World Tour, I want to win that World Championship. That would be great. So started out real good first part of the season. I think, I think I got second place at Highland to Brandon. So I should have, the white frame, I forgot to say that. The white and blue frame. This is the first place big sword from Claymore Challenge. And then the black and yellow frame, here we go, the second place little sword. And the season started out with some good results. This really cool paint job new bike in 2010. And I was sitting really good in the points. And we were at Crankworks, Colorado. And I remember thinking, well, I need to win this contest because I need these points. and I had my safety run in mind. I knew what I was going to do for my safety run. If you can't tell, this is leading to some of the not so good times on this frame. All right, I'm going to do my safety run first. And I looked up and I saw Brandon do his first run, and it was so good. I was like, well, so much for the safety run. I'm going to have to go right for the banger run, first run. And the trick I had up my sleeve to try to win that contest was front flipping off of the whale tail. And run was going great, tailed off the first drop, spun this hip, and I'm coming into the whale tail thinking front flip, snapped off the lip. Everything's going great. I think this is going to be ace. I'm like this short. I come up this short, knuckle the landing, I get tossed all the way to the bottom. So this frame is the one that I broke my femur on at Crankworks, Colorado. Got some real good footage of the ground impact, plus my wife running over to make sure I'm all right. Laying on my side, when I lifted my leg up, or what I thought I was doing was lifting my leg up like this, only the top part of it lifted up. So now it's at a right angle here because the femur is completely in two pieces. So that was the end of the 2010 season. Now when I look at that bike, I think of a whole lot of motivation and some good contest results and some real fun riding at home that led up to a broken femur and that frame getting shelved forever, because next thing you know, 2010 rolled into 2011. Beginning of 2011, my leg is finally healed and I get a new slope frame. It's this one right here. Another case of Trek being cool enough to let us have custom graphics that we curate along with them. And we were going with the animal theme again. They said, you guys want to pick new animals? And I said, yeah, I want a bird. I want like a powerful, strong, mean bird, like a hawk or something. Bald eagle. So it's like a hawk or it's a bald eagle. Whatever it is, those wings look cool. The colors, going with black again instead of just black and yellow. We got a little green in there, freshening things up a bit. And this frame was like coming back from a broken femur, saying, all right, I want to pick up where I left off. Yeah, sure, I might have missed some time getting ready, but I'm ready to like learn some new tricks and go for it. So Crankworks Whistler, front flip Superman. I had a really sore shoulder that year for some reason. Oh, I remember what reason. I crashed really hard at Claymore on a front flip. So this thing's starting to happen when I'm crashing on front flips, right?
Big guy here.
And my shoulder was wrecked in Whistler, but I was still able to get a decent run. And then back to Crankworks, Colorado. This frame means a lot to me because of this story I'm about to tell right now. 1 year later, to the day, back at Crankworks, Colorado, where I'd broken my femur with a front flip a year before. And I'm sitting there on this bike with a really sore shoulder from a crash earlier on in the year, and I really don't want to crash myself out of the season, but I really don't want to just phone it in either. So I come up with a run that I think can do all right, and put it all together and win the contest a year after breaking my femur on the course. And even though front flips had been biting me a lot at that point in time, I used the front flip no-hander to win that contest. And I think it was really cool feeling to win that contest with all that had taken place the year before. And it felt really good. And I look at that frame and I think back to that right there. And I think back to the good times and the struggles that I had during those times. But the fact that, you know, some stuff worked out. Hard work pays off. And I probably shot a segment on that bike too. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. Maybe it was just like recover and get back into competitions. And when we move on to the next frame, this one's still pretty fresh because I'm pretty sure I only rode it for Crankworks Whistler that year. And another year of like a bunch of weird injuries, but trying to get back and compete. And this was a podium at Crankworks Whistler, a third place. And it was, I mean, these last three frames right here that we've talked about, we're kind of getting into this story of like injury, recover, have one good result for the year. And so for each of these ones, I look at them and I just think back to one contest result. And for this one, it's third place at Crankworks Whistler, which had now started to become known as Joyride. I guess the year before is when Joyride started. And that was the last year where the courses had really creative line options and gigantic features. There was this one jump in particular that if you didn't want to jump into a satellite dish and jump out, you could straight line and gap over the whole thing. It was like a 60-foot double or something like that. And I remember Zink and I, we were like, all right, we're starting to be the old guys a little bit here, and we may not have the technical tricks that the younger guys have, but there's still a big feature on the course, and we can still just go balls out into that big feature and get some points. So Zink unfortunately crashed on that big jump, so he didn't get a good result. But I was able to flip that thing and keep it rolling and tail up off the last drop. And for some reason, I kept crashing into the finish line arch, but the judges didn't dock me too much. So standing on the third step of the podium with Thomas Janon, the youngster, who came out of nowhere and won the competition, and then Martin Soderstrom, a guy who I had been riding contests with a bunch the few years leading up to that. So that was a cool podium, and when I look at that ketchup, mustard, McDonald's, red and yellow frame, I think of Joyride 2012. We're getting there, man. We're getting to the last two frames. The last two frames that represent my last two competition years before I decided to hang up all these suckers and not compete anymore. We're going to move on to this one, which is 2013. And I'm going to go look and see what to talk. Oh, yeah, I know what to talk about with this one. This one's Unreal, right? Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, moving right along. Okay, so when I look at each one of these frames, something in particular comes to mind. And this is like the last 3 years. There's some struggle years, right? But when I look at this one, some positive thoughts come to mind. My body was getting back to being healthy, and I was really kind of getting back to my roots, going, all right, contests are cool and everything, but rather than being consumed by the FMB World Tour overall, let's go film a video segment, man. Let's go do something cool that makes me feel like myself again. And coincidentally, it came at the right time because this was the year when TGR and Anthill came out with the film Unreal. We went to Wyoming, really close to where TGR is headquartered in Jackson Hole. We went to a town called Du Bois, Wyoming, riding with Brett Rheeder and Tom Van Steenbergen, and just getting to build whatever we want in this amazing terrain, good dirt to ride on, beautiful backdrops. So some of my favorite things I did on this frame, I was looking at these hay bales every single day of this shoot, and I was thinking, man, it would be great to stack those things up, build a lip and landing, and hand plant those hay bales. And last day of the shoot, we built that setup, and it started raining. We figured we weren't going to be able to do it. Then a rainbow came out, the dirt dried, and we got that hand plant. I just love that Sterling Lawrence shot of that hand plant with the rainbow in the background. But we built a jump section at that ranch that started out with a great step up into a little roller, into a step down. It was my first time doing a backflip tail up off a step down. So it really kind of like invigorated me, got me back to the point where I'm like, all right, cool. I just got a really good film segment in the can, and I can get excited about going out and doing contests again. And the next time I did go out and do contests again, it was on this next frame here, the last frame in the line. It's a good thing my garage is exactly the width it is, because I wouldn't have any more rooms for any more frames if I kept competing. Maybe that's why I stopped. But this white and red frame, the graphics came from one of the Rockstar flavors, and I thought the can looked really cool. But I don't remember what the flavor was, but it had a white and red can with these black stripes on it. And so Eric Hath, who does all the paint for the Project One frames at Trek, Eric Hath gets to be an artist, because that's what he is, whenever one of the Trek team riders comes up with an idea. So he nailed it on this one, and this was my 2014 Trek Ticket S slope bike. And after that good film shoot for Unreal, my slope game was feeling pretty good. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go to France and ride contests again this season, because I was already at the point where I was having so much fun filming. I was going, you know what, I don't know, the slopestyle contest might be for the kids now. It might be time to take a step back. I was like, let's do one last season. You don't say one. You don't ever say one more unless you're willing to knock on wood at some point. But I said, let's do one more season. So I went to France, had a good run going, but a couple crash in each run. And so one last big contest for the year, I brought this frame to Whistler, and had a decent run going, but another case of just coming up a little bit too short, getting tossed at the bottom of the landing. And in my head, that was already my last slopestyle run. And when I hit the ground, I was like, well, even if I wanted to get back up and do another one right now, I wouldn't be able to. Went back to the Fox motorhome, which was right at the bottom of the course. Very sore. Decided to go use the motorhome restroom. Whole lot of red came out. Realized it was time to go to the clinic. They ambulanced me from the clinic down to Vancouver, spent a few days in the hospital there. And while I was in the hospital in Vancouver, I'd been looking at houses online in Bend, Oregon, because we were considering moving there. But we went and we hung out for a few days. I checked in at the urology clinic, and one of the houses that I had found on my phone in that hospital bed in Vancouver ended up being this house right here that we're standing in right now, that all these frames are mounted to the garage of. And when I look at this frame, I think of having my riding at a good level, but being ready to finish competing in slopestyle, having a big crash, sitting in a hospital bed, finding the house that would eventually be the one we would move into in Bend, Oregon. That was 6 years later. We've now dropped the anchor here and thrown all the frames up on the wall. Ooh, let me go get the beanie.
What? Oh.
Okay. So, remember I said you can just send them a picture of anything, they'll make a frame? So there we go, a bunch of cool different graphics on all these frames, a bunch of good memories on stuff I've done on them. And as you can see, as it went, the graphics got more and more complex and intriguing, and it just hasn't slowed down from there. Let me show you my newest slope frame, right? I talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but look at this thing. So the graphics, let's first talk about that. It's kind of ridiculous how good this looks. I look at all the different frames I've had, and I have some that are, you know, more my favorites than others, but this one just feels like it's a level above all the rest. I love the way this thing looks, and here's where I got the idea for it. It wasn't a Rockstar can this time, it was a Rockstar beanie, but I just really liked the way this looked. It was like a, you know, a two-tone gray tie-dye kind of thing, and all I did was send Eric Heth a picture of this, and he's like, I think I can do that. I think I got it. Bonnie came up with the great idea of doing silver on the Trek logo. We kind of borrowed that from the Fuel EX8 from this year, and it just came together perfect. I put the Marzocchi Bomber DJ up front, which is available for sale now, a cheaper version of getting like a 831, and it's perfect. It's everything a dirt jump, slope, style bike, pump track fork needs to be. And let's just continue going through the parts I put on this bad Sally. I've got the Bontrager Line Pro bar and stem. Wheels, these are some wheels that I've had built up on older bikes before, just a pair of 26s that I had laying around, laced up to XTR hubs, the Bontrager rims. And I decided to go single speed on this one. So I got the reverse components, chain tensioner on there. It's doing a really good job. This custom tuned shock that Marzocchi sent out. It doesn't have the full floater anymore. And one really good perk to that is it ramps up the progression so much, which is like the biggest deal on a slope bike ever. I did XT cranks on this thing, and I was really glad I was able to do that because they're really light, which is what you want on a slope bike. We got the plastic Bontrager Line Elite pedals in army green. I think they look killer. They're the same shape as the Line Pro pedals I've been running forever, but they're so much lighter. This whole thing is ridiculous. Not only is it really light, but it's like balanced. Should we weigh it? Let's just weigh it. Oh yeah, I've got the gray Sensus grips on there without the flange. Those tie the whole room together. Went with the Chromag seat. Been running those for a long time. Let's see what the actual weight is of this thing. 26 pounds, 15 ounces, just under 27 pounds. So you can see here, slope bikes have come a long way, and this is basically the epitome of a modern day 2021 version of a slope bike. I'm excited to have this one, to shoot tons of videos on this year. And thanks for watching me babble on and on and on endlessly about this collection of frames that, you know, they might be dented, muddy, dirty, and beat up, but they mean a lot to me. And it means a lot to me that you sat here and listened to me babble about them. Thanks for watching. Go hang out at the channel for a little while, would you? Dance around, play around. Like a kid at a playground, you know, they go down the slide, they go on the monkey bars. You're here at my park. Go play on my slide and my monkey bars. Go watch a video, no, go subscribe here and then go watch some videos here. Maybe there's a playlist here. So you watch like 3 or 4 videos. You don't have to go home, but you can stay here. Bye-bye.